Hi, friends. My name is Jasper Cloete. I'm the founder of the Geek Movement that started in 2008. And this is just a short introduction of the actual presentation that if you're interested, you can always talk to the person who showed you this little recording and find out more about it. But basically, in 2008, we realized that the big problem in our world that causes all this economic lack and pain and no legacy and lack of survival and over indebtedness comes from a one generation mindset, which is perpetuated by our politicians, our media, the laws of our country, the education system, and so forth. And we then realized that there's a better way to do it because some families already live that way. And that is then the three generation mindset where that could be you, the founding parent of your family legacy. We have three or more income streams. You have the time and money and health to enjoy it. You have a lifestyle of abundance, a life of significance, and you leave a legacy. But how do you get there? So it all started when we discovered an ancient truth. And for those of you who owns a Bible, you can look it up in Proverbs 13:22. And it says, a good man leaves an inheritance of moral stability and goodness to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner finds its way eventually into the hands of the righteous for whom it was laid up. This is the Amplified Version. And the revelation we received in 2008 when we discovered this ancient truth, and many of us are Christians, then we've heard this thing preached from church pulpits as to make it sound that you just have to become a Christian, then you can claim the wealth of the sinner. But God showed us, no, that's not what stands there. You have to understand the origin. And the book of Proverbs came about when wise men of old would observe society, and when they see for the same action, doesn't matter who does that action, but action A always result in result B, good or bad. Then it became a social law, and parents would then teach their children, do that for that result, or don't do that so you don't have that result. And those days, they didn't have the writing instruments to write things down. Only the very rich could afford scribes. And so when Solomon came to earth, he was both an observer and also a rich man who could afford to pen things down. And God prompted him to pen down all these society laws or social laws. And a social law is like a scientific law. It is always true, regardless of the circumstances of the time frame. If we try to reread this in today's language, we will put it as follows. In any time period, under any government condition, under any economic condition, any world condition, if you can find a man, woman, or couple who dedicate their earthly lives to leave an inheritance that's also of benefit to society, but that inheritance must still be functional during the time of the children's children, grandchildren. That's part A of the equation. Then part B, the promise is that the wealth, the unused resources of the sinner, families who missed the mark, will eventually come into the hands of the righteous, families who are doing the right thing and are prepared for how to handle this wealth. And that got me very excited, and that was the start of the Geek Movement. And to unpack it a bit further, here's a very nice graph to illustrate it. And the horizontal axis is then your lifespan in years, and you can expect to become 80 years old, and that makes you generation one. And then the vertical axis would be your wealth and impact in society. But if we now try to make a story out of that law on legacy, then if we unpack it how it's currently lived, most people live the one generation mindset, which is illustrated by the yellow line, where they get born, they grow up, they look for a job or career where they can make the most money as fast as they can. So that because if they don't make it fast enough, by around 50, society tells them you're now too old and you can't get a job anymore. And then the financial institutions will tell them, if you saved enough money and took out the right policies, then you should have enough money that if you then eat it up slowly enough, it should last you until your dying day. And if you're really successful, you should even have some money left over to pay for the funeral and leave some money for the kids. And you will agree with me, this is probably the understanding by 99.99% of society out there. And if that is then true, what does it make us? It makes us a society where in our lifetime we make it and we eat it. And then our children start again and our children make it and they eat it. And their children start again and make it and eat it. And if we drew a trend line, it shows a mediocre family that just existed week to week, month to month, year to year, and survived, but there wasn't much fun in their lives. If I look at most people, by the time they get to 80, I think you'll agree with me, most people are not having an enjoyable life and may find themselves living in the backyard of someone's house or depending on their good mercy and forgotten. So that's the current generation one lifestyle. But it doesn't have to be like that. Imagine if during our lifetime, doesn't matter how poor we start, but we can then turn our minds to think 30 years beyond my death into the future. And this is the green line that say I start humble, might even start very poor, but I make decisions all the way in a way that on a daily basis, I ask myself, how will this decision be of benefit, whether it's a purchase decision, a career decision, a relationship decision, but how will it play out and be of benefit for the time when my children are now elderly people? So that's beyond your death. If you can cast your mind that far into the future, then what will happen is you start humbly, but because you study trends and you say, where is society going? And you're not too concerned about what the media is trying to tell you for today and the Facebooks and all the social media, you focus on real economy. What would people still need 5, 10, 15 years from now? And it might well be that you buy that little empty piece of land on the outskirts of town because you have, by faith, a vision of how the town will grow. And for the next 10, 15 years, you struggle to pay it off. But then 15, 20 years later, it's your stand. It's paid for, and the town has expanded, and now your empty stand is right in the middle of a new suburb and very valuable, and people say you were lucky. Now, that's the kind of person that you don't start with fast, but when this guy's economic curve goes down, yours still goes up. And at the ripe old age, you are impactful in society, have the means and resources to still impact decisions. And you might even a few days or weeks before your death still sign a big contract, knowing that your children are in place to take it over. So how many such people do you know? Probably not many. And how praiseworthy it might be, that's not God's best for society. That's why God gave us that social law that's always true for any person who starts it. And that's to do things for the time of your children's children. Because if you can have that time span horizon, and whatever you do on a daily basis, you ask yourself, how will it play out during the time of my grandchildren? That then put you onto the purple line, humble beginnings, train my children how to be stewards of resources, how we not builders, how we not consumers, but we builders, and we are not owners, but we stewards. But release your children in their gifting, but carry on and plow in whatever money you make into more ventures, bring the right people around you. I believe there's for every family at least 3 or more businesses within them. Put it into the right structure so that there's succession planning in place. And you just keep on going. And as time goes on, you have more and more money, more and more resources. You're more and more impactful. You enjoy life. And then at a certain time, somewhere in the future, God calls you home, say, well done. But then only in hindsight have you reached your peak. And your peak now becomes the foundation for the next generation. and they pick the foundation for the next generation. And then this family, history will talk of them as these generational families who impact the world because they grow from strength to strength, and they God's blessing to a country because they know how to create sustainable job opportunities for people regardless of their faith and religion and race or academic background. So that, in essence, is an unpacking of the journey of gig. For people who are interested, you can then certainly speak to the person who showed you the slide. And then just as a wrap up, there's another truth in Proverbs 24:3 and 4. It says, through skillful and godly wisdom is a house, a life, a home, a family built, and by understanding it is established on a sound and good foundation. And by knowledge shall its chambers of every area be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So that brought us to say, if we now look at a family and that family put up their hands to say, the buck stops here, I'm not going to make excuses for my past anymore. I have the dream to become the founding parent of my family. What now? We will then, through the gig movement, teach you, number one, how to build a solid foundation based on wisdom, not human wisdom, not political wisdom, not the wisdom that you learned in school, but wisdom that stood the test of time and how these generational families build it, so that on that you can now build the rest of the house. So a house is only as good as its foundation, but then it needs walls to protect itself. And the first wall is the understanding of what does wealth consist of. And here you, over time, will learn about everything that you won't necessarily learn in school, and at a high cost, you might learn some of it at university. But we will teach you from selling skills, people skills, marketing skills, leadership skills, accounting, money management, time management, etc., etc. But theory alone means nothing unless you then also apply it into a practical environment. So over time, with your involvement in the gig movement, you learn how to then practically apply it so that you and your family will become a family living a life of well-being and eventually have 3 or more income streams. But the critical part is all of that is there to support the roof structure. And that is in your hands. The shape and the size of the roof and the structure below it depends on how big do you see your family, your legacy in future. What worth do you put on yourself and your family? And then for people who have that vision, then you can build any kind of structure, and in your lifetime you build a basic structure, and then your next generation come and they lift the roof and they add more rooms, and in time to come this generational family house has become a massive complex that can house many, many families and be a blessing to many, many people. So that brings us to the end of the introduction. If you enjoyed it, it stirs something in your heart, you want to know more, talk to the person who shares this with you, and come and attend one of our next workshops and link up with your local community, and let's take it from there. God bless.